Well, so congrats on the new show, everyone. So the book was such a monumental success, right? It won the Newbery. It's used in, I think, school curriculums all over the country. How did it feel to try to adapt this work to the screen?
Well, Julia, it was a bit challenging because the biggest thing for me was I'd written this novel in verse. How do we then
Yeah.
translate the poetry onto the screen? And so
Hmm.
Damani and I tossed around a lot of different ideas of how to do that. And we finally landed on a few, one being the narration, which is pretty traditional. And
Hmm.
the other being, how are we going to make sure our main character speaks in a way that is not cliche, but is still poetic, that's not formulaic and expected, but still interesting and highly original. And I think once we found that rhythm, and maybe that it took us a couple years to figure that out, but once we found it, it was smooth sailing. We were moving and grooving and shaking and baking.
Hmm. That's awesome. Kimberly and Damani, how were you both involved in that adaptation?
Just yeah, we came on board and tried to figure out how do we take this beloved novel and written entirely in poetry and turn it into something with dialogue and movement. And it was a labor of love that we
Hmm.
that we got there, and that we're sitting here in front of you. So we're thrilled to be here. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I was very interested in the crossover as a metaphor, right? Because the title of the book and the series, and in the series, that very first episode, it really establishes it as like this is the central metaphor of this story. So mostly Kwame, but really everyone, how did you settle on that particular device as the basis of the story?
So when I was 3 years old, my father took me to a basketball court to have me shoot free throws. I
Mhm.
can barely hold the ball, let alone shoot it. And this playground supervisor came over and he took out his wrench and began to lower the goal to make it smaller for me so I could reach it. And my dad said, "Stop. I don't want you to lower his goal. He doesn't know he can't make it." And so the idea behind the crossover was really rooted in this metaphor of basketball. How
Mhm.
can we how can we take this sports metaphor and apply it to our life? What are the rules on the court that apply in our lives? And so it was a very practical thing. Okay, well, what's the basketball metaphor I'm going to use in the title? I went
Mhm.
through hundreds of those, Julia.
Mm.
And once I
Yeah.
settled on the crossover, that began to dictate some of the overarching themes of the book. In particular, well, we don't want to give away spoilers, but yeah, it
Well,
began
yeah.
it began to dictate sort of how the book was going to play out.
Hmm. That's interesting. So I know sometimes like the story comes first and then you notice like a theme has come out. But it sounds like in this case, like you really wanted to start with the sport as metaphor, and everything kind of came out of that. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I'm a
Yeah.
big I will spend days, if not weeks, coming up with a title um,
Hmm.
that reflects the theme and the idea that I want to talk about in my story. And I can't write a single word until I
Hmm.
have a working title. And then that
Interesting.
begins to inform it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Before we wrap up, just any favorite things about the about bring you know about creating the adaptation, or any challenges that you faced?
I would say the biggest challenge for us was the weaving the poetry,
Yeah.
some of the scenes. But once again, we got our groove and figured that out.
Hmm.
Um, we were gone. We were gone with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the poetry for me was like it was a learning curve. Getting that in the scene. So yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. Congrats on the new show. And yeah, I liked it. So thank you.
thank you so much.